Welcome to the Energy Forum, where we explore the key issues shaping energy markets, policies, and innovations worldwide. I'm Ken Medlock, Senior Director of the Center for Energy Studies at the Baker Institute for Public Policy at Rice University. Today, we're tackling a big question in the future of transportation. What role could ammonia play as a fuel? With the global push for low-carbon energy solutions, ammonia has been gaining attention, especially in sectors like shipping and heavy transport over the last few years. But how realistic is widespread adoption? What challenges still need to be addressed? And what's happening right now to bring ammonia-powered transportation closer to reality? To explore this, we have a great conversation ahead. Our host today is Ed Emmett, Fellow in Energy and Transportation Policy at the Baker Institute, and a longtime leader in the transportation industry. He's joined by Joel Moser, Chief Executive Officer of First Ammonia, a company developing the world's first modular, commercial-scale solutions to produce green ammonia from existing intermittent renewable energy. Ed, take it away.
Well, thank you, Ken. Joel, it's great to have you with us.
Ed, thank you for welcoming to me to Rice University and to the Baker Institute. It's a pleasure to get to know what you're doing here. It's all quite impressive.
Well, this topic of the future of fuels is something that the public's going to get to know very well, whether they want to or not going forward, because we are definitely in an energy transition period. So let's start. What can you tell us about First Ammonia, how it's developing ammonia as a fuel for transportation and other things?
Absolutely. It's a favorite topic for me, as you're not surprised to hear. Let me first talk a little bit about ammonia, and then I'll tell you about our company. Ammonia is a product which has been in commercial use for 100 years. It's primarily used as a fertilizer or a feedstock for fertilizer. It's, in fact, the second most produced chemical in the world. There are about 200 million metric tons of ammonia produced and used each year. About 20% of that or so floats over the ocean and being transported from one point of production to another. And now, ammonia, you may recall from chemistry class, is NH3, so it's nitrogen and hydrogen. And its use primarily to date, and certainly as a fertilizer, is for the nitrogen. And the hydrogen is just incidental. You need to fix nitrogen to use it as a fertilizer. What's new is to think about ammonia's use for the hydrogen. The ammonia as a carrier of hydrogen and therefore a carrier of energy. What's new about ammonia is that it has potential as a fuel. And I know we'll talk about that a little bit more, so I'll tell you about our company. We started during the pandemic. My prior company had been looking at transition fuels and working with an excellent, historic Danish engineering firm called Topsoe, which is a world leader in the production of science for ammonia, and was developing a new way to make ammonia from hydrogen that is produced from water as opposed to natural gas. And we decided to double down and to start a company, which we came to call First Ammonia, for the purpose of making electric ammonia, ammonia made from water and renewable power, as opposed to its historic pathway, which is from natural gas. Making it a much
cleaner fuel, then, in a way.
Well, it's a different pathway historically for much of its history, and certainly primarily today, if not exclusively. Ammonia is made by stripping hydrogen from natural gas, letting the carbon go into the air as carbon dioxide, and then you make ammonia by combining the hydrogen with nitrogen from the atmosphere. We will be making ammonia from stripping hydrogen from the oxygen in water, releasing the oxygen into the air, and then combining that hydrogen with nitrogen from the air. So it's identical chemically, but not in its process.
Okay. So the flagship project that you have planned, I believe, is in Victoria, Texas, at the Port of Victoria, which is on a barge canal. How are the renewable energy sources going to be used to produce ammonia there, and with this electrolyzer cells technology that you've talked about?
Well, we are delighted with our flagship site in Victoria. I think there can't possibly be a better place in the world to start this industry. Victoria, while inland, is on a barge canal, so we're able to get from our port It's actually the port's port. We like to think of it as our port on the barge canal, to deep water docks along the Intracoastal Waterway and in the harbor, and so anywhere in the world. Texas is blessed with wind and solar power, and oftentimes too much. So there's often negative pricing and even curtailment. So there's an opportunity in Texas to balance the use of renewable power on the grid by using some of the excess power at times to fuel the production of green hydrogen into green ammonia. Victoria, by the way, also has a technical college. The Victoria College has an emerging technology center which was there before we got there, which has been there for a few years, where they teach young people how to run chemical plants, the careers of the future. So we are so excited to be in Victoria, and our partners in Victoria have been fantastic.
So if we're talking about energy transition, then what you're doing in Victoria and the workforce, all that ties together well. How is the ammonia that First Ammonia is going to produce going to be used? And then a follow-up to that is, for the transportation sector, how can ammonia be used?
Ed, I know that a lot of people have different views on the future of energy and energy transition. One doesn't have to necessarily subscribe to the view that energy will transition to understand the importance of this component of the industry. Our fuel is in demand currently and will be in growing demand in Europe, because Europe has imposed requirements of carbon content for its products, for its chemicals. It will be in demand in Asia, in Japan and Korea, as well as Singapore and other countries, which are also eager to reduce the incidental carbon emissions from their power generation. And because the International Maritime Organization is requiring lower carbon emissions from global shipping. So initially, the product that we'll make in Victoria, and this is public knowledge, will be sold to a German power company, Uniper, which is Europe's largest LNG trader. It will eventually make its way to Europe and will, in all likelihood, initially be used in the chemical and petrochemical industries of Europe in order to achieve the carbon standards that the European Union is imposing upon European companies. But transportation is a very interesting component of the future of green ammonia. There are ships that will be sailing as soon as next year that will be powered by low-carbon ammonia. And it's important to note that there are two pathways to reduce the carbon content of the production of ammonia. One is the way we're doing it, to start with water and electricity and essentially emit oxygen in its production. The other is the traditional pathway, starting with natural gas, but using carbon capture to capture the carbon and therefore lower the carbon emissions associated with its production. So we've called that, for now, green electric versus blue with carbon capture. Someday we might just use scoring. I like to acknowledge the source of the hydrogen because it's important, I think, product labeling. So we often like to call our product electric ammonia to contrast it with traditional production, which has carbon capture.
Let's stick with transportation for a minute. What are the key advantages and what are the challenges to using ammonia as a fuel for transportation, not only in ocean shipping, but in whatever other modes of transportation you might want to mention?
Ed, let me start by saying you can pretty much use ammonia as a fuel for anything you use a fuel for. You obviously need different kinds of engines, but there is potential to fuel shipping, trucking, automotive transportation, air travel, and freestanding engines around the world. A lot of residences and businesses are fueled by freestanding diesel generators. Ammonia is a fuel and can be used for any one of those applications. The initial challenge is that ammonia is not really flammable. It doesn't burn that well. So it needs a co-fuel to be an adequate fuel for transportation or for anything. And the The obvious co-fuel for ammonia is hydrogen because ammonia carries hydrogen. So you can crack some of the ammonia back into hydrogen, so essentially provide on board, if you will, the co-fuel. The initial uses of ammonia as a transportation fuel will, however, be in shipping, where there's lots of room for lots of different things. So the plan currently for most of the ships that are being constructed, that are being built for ammonia, is to be co-fueled, probably by a biodiesel or some other co-fuel which is lower carbon. So that's the first challenge. The second challenge, and it's very important to acknowledge, that ammonia is toxic. So you don't want to breathe it. Very important. But ammonia has been safely handled as an industrial product for 100 years. So there are safe handling protocols. There have been very few industrial accidents through history in the use of ammonia. I mean, here's the thing. Hydrocarbons are flammable. Hydrogen's explosive and ammonia is toxic. So you're not going to find a fuel that doesn't require safe handling. It's just a question of how it's handled and what the applications are.
Assuming we can get past those technological hurdles and safe handling, which, as you mentioned, ammonia is being moved all over the world right now and in various circumstances. How does ammonia compare to other fuels in terms of emissions and environmental impact?
There are a lot of options for transition fuels. There are synthetic diesel, synthetic aviation fuel. Methanol is something that's in rising production and use. There's pure hydrogen, and there's ammonia. An important line, however, is the synthetic fuels that are hydrocarbons, and then there's hydrogen and ammonia. So the entire class of transition fuels, such as synthetic diesel or sustainable aviation fuel, and even methanol, they're hydrocarbons. Now, the theory is that there is a carbon recycling process that happens that will use biogenic carbon or recapture carbon. But to me, sort of philosophically, if I might, if the objective globally as a policy matter of transition fuels is to reduce the emissions of carbon, then the whole idea of transition fuels that are hydrocarbons, that have carbon, sort of is, let's just call it suboptimal. So that leaves two options, pure hydrogen and ammonia. And there's a lot of excitement about hydrogen. And in fact, ammonia is a hydrogen product. It's a hydrogen derivative. I like to think of hydrogen as the crude and ammonia as a sort of refined product. Ammonia is part of hydrogen. And in fact, if you think about it, hydrogen is H2, ammonia is NH3. There's more hydrogen in ammonia than in hydrogen. But there's a challenge to using hydrogen as a fuel. Hydrogen's explosive, just for starters. Second of all, it's the smallest molecule in the world. It tends to leak from almost any place. And while it's not a greenhouse gas, it combines the atmosphere with other molecules and forms greenhouse gases. And finally, it's very expensive, difficult, challenging, expensive to store it and transport it because it's a very volatile gas. Ammonia is sort of hydrogen light. That nitrogen calms that hydrogen down, so it's easy to transport and store. It has about the same physical characteristics as propane. So the same kind of tank you use to fuel your gas grill in your backyard or suburban propane tank, you can use that kind of containment for ammonia. So it's a much more practical, carbon-free fuel. And so I think, and obviously I'm biased, my company is called First Ammonia, but I think it's going to be the long-term winner. It's going to be the workhorse of the hydrogen economy. It is going to be the way that we commercialize and apply hydrogen as a transition fuel.
What to me is a very interesting point. People talk about various fuels and various modes of transportation, but they tend to leave out that middle piece. I mean, for example, in the trucking industry, you got the truck stops. They're going to have to handle whatever fuel. Likewise, ocean shipping, the ports are going to have to handle the fuel. So if I'm hearing you correctly, ammonia seems to have some fairly significant advantages when it comes to just being able to handle it, store it, move it, and use it as a fuel. Is that a correct statement?
That's absolutely correct. And there's ammonia handling, storage, and transportation infrastructure all over the world. 200 million metric tons a year. Many, many ports have ammonia storage terminals. People don't even know that they're there because it's being handled and transported and transshipped for its use as a fertilizer. There are ammonia ships sailing on the oceans right now, ammonia barges up and down the Mississippi River. And in fact, there are ammonia barges on the Victoria Barge Canal at this moment because a neighboring plant to our first site uses ammonia in its chemical processes. So it's a simple chemical to store, to transport, and again, 100 years of history of handling this chemical.
So let's assume ammonia becomes an accepted fuel. What incentives are going to be necessary in order to get this industry up and running? Are there any existing incentives? Are there government investments? What's it going to take to make this happen?
Making low-carbon ammonia, whether it's zero carbon, the way we make it, or CCS or blue ammonia, and for that matter, green hydrogen and blue hydrogen, is more expensive than making it the traditional way. It's an expensive product to make now because the production facilities are small, because the market has not grown yet. So there's a diseconomy of scale in the early years of this industry. The only places in the world where this product is going to be made initially are countries which are supporting its production. So we have the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia that is developing 2 huge green ammonia projects, including NEOM, which is known better for the plan of the big residential line, but it's actually first building a gigantic green ammonia plant. And China, which is using state capital to subsidize that. And then there's a project that's underway in India where the power grid is heavily subsidized. Finally, the U.S., which was thought to be the industry leader when the green hydrogen, when the hydrogen tax credit was passed a couple of years ago as part of the Inflation Reduction Act. It is necessary in the early stages of this industry for the production of this product to have government support because the ends don't meet. The price at which this product is going to be purchased in the market initially is lower than the cost of its production without the support. So that's the subsidy. For the U.S. to be part of the game, what is called 45V, which is the section of the Internal Revenue Code, which provides a tax credit for the production of low and zero carbon hydrogen, needs to survive, or else this product will be made in China, Saudi Arabia, perhaps India. In time, these subsidies won't be necessary because in time, as the industry grows, as the number of ships using this product increase, as its use grows, the industry will grow and the production of this product can be done at scale and won't require the subsidy.
We keep mentioning ocean shipping because that seems to be one that some of the big ocean carriers are already ordering ships that are fueled by ammonia. If that's the case, then the United States is going to have to at least produce enough ammonia to fuel those ships when they get here. So that can either be produced here or I guess imported from someplace like China. So we did talk about ocean shipping, but what other applications do you see in the future for the clean ammonia that you're planning to produce?
Most people understand that renewable power is intermittent and needs some other form of energy to power the electrical grid when the sun's not shining and or the wind's not blowing. And that's done today with what are called peaker plants, which are typically fueled by natural gas or perhaps oil or coal. Well, several companies in the world, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, IHI, GE, are developing and will soon be shipping for delivery pure ammonia-fueled turbine generators. So ammonia can be a power generation fuel. Now, it makes no sense at first for if there's renewable power in the grid, to be burning ammonia made from renewable power, that makes no sense. But to balance the grid in times when there is not enough, ammonia can be the peaker fuel. And in fact, if you've got enough renewable power for most of the time, you probably got too much some of the time. And that's when you make ammonia, and then you use it when there isn't enough. So essentially, ammonia is, and again, I am biased, but ammonia is that holy grail of renewable power. It is the chemical battery and doesn't require heavy mining of heavy metals to produce. It's a chemical battery. It can be the thing which balances renewable power for power production.
Well, Joel, this is a conversation that could go on for a long time. I know I, like most members of the public, we've always heard of ammonia, and now we're beginning to hear about ammonia in a whole different way, and perhaps children and grandchildren will look up and start talking about ships and other vehicles that are fueled by ammonia, all because of what's starting here today. So it's going to be a fascinating story to watch, and we appreciate your being with us today.
Thank you. I thank you for the opportunity to be here to talk to you about it. It's a topic which I obviously find very exciting, and I do hope others will come to understand the role that it can play.
The Energy Forum is brought to you by the Center for Energy Studies at the Baker Institute for Public Policy at Rice University. This episode was produced by Maram Hijazi. AV production was led by Kevin Young. Be sure to visit us at bakerinstitute.org/center-energy-studies to learn more. Thanks for listening.